I'm from Singapore, and I'm part of a secret project that's bringing back Indian heritage home. So secret that this is the first time we're ever publicly speaking about it. Treasures have been looted for decades and centuries, and we are working really hard with volunteers, governments across the board to bring them back. But to really understand what we do today, we'd have to go back a few thousand years to the Brihadeshwara temple complex on the banks of the river Kaveri. Now, this was built by Rajaraja Chola, one of India's biggest dynasties, and it was so cool back in its day. Not just did it employ priests, but it employed dancers, scholars, authors, philosophers, what have you. You know, in a way, it was kind of like the ink talks of its time. Yeah. The temple was so amazing that in 1954, when the Indian government issued a 1,000 rupee note, they put a picture of the temple on it. This is how parts of the complex look today. The gods lay in ruins, and dogs walk around where people like you and me should. But why did this happen? The reason is really simple. The Nataraja, the main deity from the Garbhagriha, or the Sanctum Sanctorium, was stolen and smuggled out of India a few years back. And this was one of many, hundreds and thousands of antiques and treasures that have been looted. I won't get into the details of how they did it, but raiders came in from New York, handpicked these statues, maps, manuscripts, what have you, smuggled them out of India, made fake papers in Hong Kong, sold them through a charity, through an auction house in London, and the statue ended up bought by the government of Australia, not knowing that it was stolen, and placed in their national museum. Now, a quick couple of things about being born Indian, right? One is that they don't let you ask questions in school. So you kind of have to wait till middle age till you start asking questions. Two, every Desi kid wants to be James Bond. So some of us basically got together and really started asking questions, right? Who's stealing these statues? Why? You know, how are they getting sold? Who's buying them? But most importantly, can we really ever get them back? We did whatever any self-respecting investigator would do. We went to Google, and we went on Twitter, and we started blogging. We started connecting with volunteers across the world and saying, hey, listen, you live in Sydney. We think there's a statue there. Could you take high-res pictures and send it out to us so we can make a match? We reached out to people in Germany. We reached out to people in India and really started getting the whole momentum going. Slowly, we had the best of the museums and art galleries across the world realizing that they're sitting on what we call chori ka mal, or stolen stuff. The picture of that handsome young man you see on the right is my good friend Vijay Sundaresan, and he was the researcher that found the trail of the Nataraja. He and I are not alone. There's Donna Yates, there's Kirit Mankoti right here in Bombay, there's Jason Felch, and there's a whole bunch of people that are saying, hey, let's just put our time and effort. And then magic starts to happen when the right intent gets together, right? First, we had international media that started waking up to the fact. You know, Sunday Times and The Guardian and, you know, New York Times and what have you. Everyone started talking about it and started pressurizing their own governments. Now, everything was working well. We had museums realizing that they need to give back stuff. We had, you know, the villain getting caught, media talking about us. But then, the statues weren't coming back as yet, and that's what we started working with. And government has a huge role to play, and we're really, really thankful that the current government realizes its duty. Something magical happened in September last year. Tony Abbott, thank you. Tony Abbott, the Australian Prime Minister, came to visit our Prime Minister and brought back the Nataraja, as you can see. Notice how our Prime Minister's smile now changes with every moving picture, yeah? So that's when the avalanche started, followed by the Canadian Prime Minister who gave back some stuff when our Prime Minister was there. And very recently, Angela Merkel came to India and brought back the Durga. Thank you. The real joy is not with, you know, with the political victory or the geopolitical victory of India. The real joy is this, right? A village that's lost its God has really lost its heart. This is how the village looks today once the statues come back. Now, This is just a drop. Where are we now? 200 plus statues. There's 70,000 that are out there. We don't know when we'll get them, when we'll not. With help, we will. And it's not just a volume game, just in terms of value. Here is one raid made in New York on one art dealer, and they got $100 million worth of antiques. Just so you know how big the game is. Now, for centuries, we've seen the destruction of culture. The Nazis did it to Jewish art. There are religious wars taking place all over the world. People are going at it with hammers and chisels and tongs and destroying it as a part of a cultural conquest. When hammers and tongs are not enough, they just drop bombs and destroy heritage. What's different about us in India here is this. We're not losing our heritage to either terrorists or to conquerors. We're losing it to our own people who are doing it for plain, simple greed, nothing else. The question you all have to ask yourself today is, are you willing to just sit by and let this happen? Thank you.